Here's another cool thing about the interrelationship and the interconnectedness of everything. This morning I was thinking about um, garden space that is on hardpan. It's rocky soil, sandy, doesn't hold nutrients. And I think about the bigger picture. If things are rocky and there's no soil in your system, and there's no compost, and there's no fluidity and movement in your system, things are rocky, things are going to be shifty and whatnot. Then there's no, if you're not nurturing yourself, then there's no connection with the deeper sense of self, finding our path. Outwardly, if you have a garden, you know very well that putting compost on your garden, putting composted manure, for instance, or composted material that's in production and has worms in it and is growing and decomposing material, you know that putting that stuff on your garden is an effective means of building the soil. Bring it back to the self. You know that through movement and through therapy, through finding your challenges and finding those things that are difficult and going into them rather than excluding them and pushing them to the outside, including them in your process, which is, think of it as both nurturing and like churning up. You have to dig up the dirt, the stuff, the meat and the potatoes, and tear it apart and break it down for what it is and disassemble it and put it back together in a way that works for you and works better. The smaller picture, back to the compost pile. Without the compost, with the compost being an external thing that's pushed away from us and is on the exterior, this becomes like a thing that's outside of our reach and outside of our grasp. If you're composting and you're just adding stuff to a pile, you're not churning it, you're not working it, you're not adding anything beneficial to it. If you think about that compost in terms of your own systems, bring it back to yourself, the compost. You want movement and fluidity. You want constantly working things. If you become stagnant and you sit still with things and you sort of push things by the wayside, you don't have movement. Things get to be kind of mundane, routine, systemic. I don't know if systemic is the right word, where you're sort of doing the same thing day in and day out and not much changes. It becomes easy in some ways because you don't have challenge, you don't have the mirroring, you don't have the reflection, you don't have that input or the way you are breaking things up and challenging yourself and learning and growing and so on. Life becomes much slower and much more intentional when we're mindful of where we are and when we can work on and churn those things that are difficult, those things that are challenging. So back to the compost. The compost pile needs care, needs maintenance, it needs things in it. You're adding lots of acidic things that don't break down very easily. You're adding some things that break down because insects eat them, they leave behind their larvae, they nurture and they grow up in it, and worms work it, and so on. But if you feed that compost by adding things that it needs, by adding nutrients, by adding iron, say, by adding, I always think of calcium and calcium-based, fish shell, crustacean shells are a great thing to add to compost. Lime powder. I was thinking this morning, the lime powder. I have a bucket of lime powder. It's sitting in a shed. It's not being utilized, and where it could be utilized and used, there is a problem with the soil. namely that there's an area of garden space that is dry and hard pan. Back to that piece. It's rocky and it's sandy and it doesn't have any nutrients and it doesn't hold anything. With some baseline, a basic calcium and calcium carbonate or lime powder added to it, or soda, it becomes more of a nurturing environment, an environment that supports that acidity and that balance. And you're looking to balance the equation in a lot of ways. So in relationships, you're looking to balance the equation. In your own self, you're looking to balance your equation. And sometimes it means churning and stirring things up. Sometimes it means having a firmer boundary. Sometimes it means looking at your core beliefs and getting down to the nitty-gritty of the compost. What's underneath this compost? What can I bring up, and what are the nuts and bolts of it? What can I bring up, and what can I rotate and work, and what does it need in order to decompose more, and in order to give me the nutrients and the sustenance that I'm expecting from it? Where is the compost in your life? Where is the compost in your garden? Is it central, or is it on the exterior? Has it been spread out and it still hasn't decomposed? What's in it that works and what's in it that doesn't work? Or is it an external thing, something where you just keep adding to the pile? Think about it in terms of compost on the exterior, and then reel it back in and think about it as the nurturing, as the churning, as the stirring up of stuff, and the movement and fluidity that we have within us, the groundedness and the solidity that we have within us to work through our challenges, to get to the underlying causes and the problems and those things which hold us back from going forward. I thank you greatly for watching and for sticking with me in this working of the compost and working of our inner selves. It's challenging. It's hard work. I don't want to do it. Nobody really wants to do it because it's not pleasurable. It's not fun. It's fun to be on the other side of it. It's certainly fun to work if you can speak to it in a positive way and share it with your friends and whatnot. Yes, I'm working on my stuff. Yes, I have a challenge with it. Yes, it's not easy. And I know that getting to the other side of it is going to be better for my life, better for other people around me. I hope this is something that you can reflect back on and that you can look at as a tool to be able to utilize any of the information that I've given you in going forward. And I hope that in the least that it was inspiration for a conversation, if nothing else. So again, thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel with many different topics. If you poke around, I have at least 60 different topics which I am working on at any given time, and sometimes I'm working on several of them at the same time as this conversation has gone. So I thank you again and have a great day. Cheers.